Annabeth had a hard time maneuvering through the mobs of tourists. Why did so many people want to see Fort Sumter on a sweltering summer day? But Annabeth quickly realized the crowds had saved their lives. Without the chaos of all these panicked mortals, the Romans would have already surrounded their outnumbered crew. Annabeth dodged into a small room that must have been part of the garrison. She tried to steady her breathing. She imagined what it would have been like to be a Union soldier on this island in 1861, surrounded by enemies, dwindling food and supplies, no reinforcements coming. Some of the Union defenders had been children of Athena. They'd hidden an important map here, something they didn't want falling into enemy hands. If Annabeth had been one of those demigods, where would she have put it? Suddenly, the walls glistened. The air became warm. Annabeth wondered if she was hallucinating. She was about to run for the exit when the door slammed shut. The mortar between the stones blistered. The bubbles popped, and thousands of tiny black spiders swelled forth. Annabeth couldn't move. Her heart seemed to have stopped. The spiders blanketed the walls, crawling over one another, spreading across the floor and gradually surrounding her. It was impossible. This couldn't be real. Terror plunged her into memories. She was 7 years old again, alone in her bedroom in Richmond, Virginia. The spiders came at night. They crawled in waves from her closet and waited in the shadows. She yelled for her father, but her father was away for work. He always seemed to be away for work. Her stepmother came instead. "I don't mind being the bad cop," she had once told Annabeth's father when she didn't think Annabeth could hear. "It's only your imagination," her stepmother said about the spiders. "You're scaring your baby brothers." "They're not my brothers," Annabeth argued, which made her stepmother's expression harden. Her eyes were almost as scary as the spiders. "Go to sleep now," her stepmother insisted. "No more screaming." The spiders came back as soon as her stepmother had left the room. Annabeth tried to hide under the covers, but it was no good. Eventually, she fell asleep from sheer exhaustion. She woke up in the morning, freckled with bites, cobwebs covering her eyes, her mouth, her nose. The bites faded before she even got dressed, so she had nothing to show her stepmother except cobwebs, which her stepmother thought was some sort of clever trick. "No more talk of spiders," her stepmother said firmly. "You're a big girl now." The second night, the spiders came again. Her stepmother continued to be the bad cop. Annabeth wasn't allowed to call her father and bother him with this nonsense. No, he would not come home early. The third night, Annabeth ran away from home. Later, at Camp Half-Blood, she learned that all children of Athena feared spiders. Long ago, Athena had taught the mortal weaver Arachne a hard lesson, cursing her for her pride by turning her into the first ever spider. Ever since, spiders had hated the children of Athena. But that didn't make her fear easier to deal with. Once, she'd almost killed Connor Stoll at camp for putting a tarantula in her bunk. Years later, she'd had a panic attack at a water park in Denver when Percy and she were assaulted by mechanical spiders. And the past few weeks, Annabeth had dreamed of spiders almost every night, crawling over her, suffocating her, wrapping her in webs. Now, standing in the barracks at Fort Sumter, she was surrounded. Her nightmares had come true. A sleepy voice murmured in her head, "Soon, my dear, you will meet the weaver soon." "Gaia?" Annabeth murmured. She feared the answer, but she asked, Who Who is the weaver? The spiders became excited, swarming over the walls, swirling around Annabeth's feet like a glistening black whirlpool. Only the hope that it might be an illusion kept Annabeth from passing out from fear. I hope you survive, child, the woman's voice said. I would prefer you as my sacrifice, but we must let the weaver take her revenge. Gaia's voice faded. On the far wall, in the center of the spider swarm, a red symbol blazed to life, the figure of an owl like the one on the silver drachma, staring straight at Annabeth. Then, just as in her nightmares, the mark of Athena burned across the walls, incinerating the spiders until the room was empty, except for the smell of sickly sweet ashes. Go, said a new voice, Annabeth's mother. Avenge me. Follow the mark. The blazing symbol of the owl faded. The garrison door burst open. Annabeth stood stunned in the middle of the room, unsure whether she'd seen something real or just a vision. An explosion shook the building. Annabeth remembered that her friends were in danger. She'd stayed here much too long. She forced herself to move. Still trembling, she stumbled outside. The ocean air helped clear her mind. She gazed across the courtyard, past the panicked tourists and fighting demigods, to the edge of the battlements, where a large mortar pointed out to sea. It might have been Annabeth's imagination, but the old artillery piece seemed to be glowing red. She dashed toward it. An eagle swooped at her, but she ducked and kept running. Nothing could possibly scare her as much as those spiders. Roman demigods had formed ranks and were advancing toward the Argo II, but a miniature storm had gathered over their heads. Though the day was clear all around them, thunder rumbled and lightning flashed above the Romans. Rain and wind pushed them back. Annabeth didn't stop to think about it. She reached the mortar and put her hand on the muzzle. On the plug that blocked the opening, the mark of Athena began to glow, the red outline of an owl. In the mortar, she said. Of course. She pried at the plug with her fingers. No luck. Cursing, she drew her dagger. As soon as the celestial bronze touched the plug shrank and loosened. Annabeth pulled it off and stuck her hand inside the cannon. Her fingers touched something cold, smooth, and metal. She pulled out a small disc of bronze the size of a tea saucer, etched with delicate letters and illustrations. She decided to examine it later. She thrust it in her pack and turned.